Hello and welcome to Vox Markets. I am John Human. I'm delighted to be joined today by David Lenigas, chairman of Vinanz, the newly Aquis floated Bitcoin miner. How are you doing, David?
Yeah, no, I'm good, thanks, John. Yeah, no, it's we're the new kid on the block. Argo sort of was the first one to sort of frontier lead into the London listed market on Bitcoin, and we've sort of navigated the regulatory path to list Vinanz, and we were lucky enough to get the symbol, the ticker symbol BTC. So yeah, we listed a week ago on Aquis. A lot of the trading platforms are still going through the process to put Vinanz live on their systems, but it's slowly getting there. You know, AJ Bell's online. Hargreaves Lansdowne apparently this morning is showing Vinanz on the screens. I think you still got to call them at the moment, but you know, Aquis has its challenge for liquidity. But you know, some of the other things I've done on Aquis eventually end up becoming quite liquid. And you know, within the first week, we've already ordered our first new cluster of miners for North America. John, we've ordered 100 new Bitcoin miners, and we're putting them into Canada, where we got a very good power rate and a very good commercial operating rate, and an exceptionally good purchase rate for 104 terahash machines. So our plan over the coming months is to roll out numerous clusters of 50 to 100 to 200 Bitcoin miners in data centers throughout North America. So yeah, no, we're off and going.
Yeah, so tell us about the model then. It's slightly different to Argo that you mentioned before. Tell us what you're doing differently and why.
Well, Argo was more about building data centers in Texas. They're pretty much exposed to one state, one power price, huge infrastructure costs, lots of staff, and the interest markets and the construction market sort of worked against them, and they got into a lot of debt that they had to restructure. Our model is not to own data centers and not to own hundreds of employees. Our model is we will own the miners, we will own them spinning. The Bitcoins that are generated go into our wallet, and we will just use big corporations' data centers to house our Bitcoin miners. And rather than sort of sitting in one locality, we really want to be a decentralized model. So if, for argument's sake, if the Texas power grid goes down, we only lose 100 to 200 to 300 Bitcoin miners spinning, while they sort that scenario. And all the other clusters are running, exceptionally well. So the whole plan is really to be low cost, highly diversified, decentralized, and own the miners, not the infrastructure. And if we do it like that, our current economic model is that from an operating sense, we're operating at 100% margin.
That's what investors always want to hear. And I guess, in terms of that margin, you mentioned power and where you can locate. Presumably this allows you to essentially arbitrage against the cheapest power options that you can find.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we decided to go with Labrador in Canada for this first lot of new 100 Bitcoin miners, we sort of scoured the market. We had rates in US cents, anything from sort of 6 to 9 to 10 cents US for your power. Each one of these machines consumes around about 3.5 kilowatts. So 100 miners is 350 kilowatts running continuously. That's a lot of electricity. And Labrador takes a lot of its power from Quebec Hydro. So we got an exceptionally good electricity rate. We've locked it in on a long-term contract, and we have a fixed monthly operating cost, and that includes the power. So every time we go out and put in another 100 or so Bitcoin miners into another cluster, we will, with our consultants and mathematicians, go out to the various data centers to get competitive rates for power. The last 100 units, the cheapest we could find was in Canada. When we go out for another 100 units sometime in the next couple of weeks, it may well be that, Manitoba's the cheapest, or Texas, or California. That's the model we want. And by rolling out new machines in clusters every month or two until we build up a significant portfolio of Bitcoin miners, we're also putting in the latest tech. the latest machines, because a lot of these older machines run a lot slower. So we're always upgrading the fleet. It's a pretty exciting model.
Yeah, I mean these machines that you've bought, they really process at quite some speed.
Well, yeah, I mean, terahash. I was sort of learning like everybody else. I mean, 104 terahash machines is 104 trillion calculations per second. So it's pretty fast. But it's not just about terahash. We could have got machines that do 120 terahash. We could have got machines that do 160 terahash. That means they process more into the algorithm. The problem with that is you look at the economic model and, you're paying maybe 2 to 3 times your price for each machine. So our model is the cheapest capital price per terahash. And we were very, very lucky, as we were talking earlier, you can get online and you can get these SJ19 Pros for anything from $2,000 to $2,500. A year and a half ago, they were, pretty much $10,000 to $11,000. So that's how much the Bitcoin machine mining price has dropped, because there's been a bit of a sort of crater in the crypto mining space. But it's picking up very quickly. So we've got an exceptional deal at $1,350 per machine. So that's so our number was $13.50 per terahash. So the more terahash you can buy per dollar, the more money you make.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And as you say, it's a very good time to be buying machines, presumably because sentiment in the crypto world has soured somewhat.
A lot of people were defaulting on their purchases too, so there was a surplus of machines. But you're going to see that turn around fairly quickly as the Bitcoin price rises, and people are expecting closer to the next Bitcoin halving, which is scheduled for April 2024. People are expecting the Bitcoin price to rise through the previous highs. Some are calling the Bitcoin price into the 150,000 to 200,000 US dollar mark. You're going to see the price of miners going up quite a lot. So our prime objective is to buy and install and leverage as many new Bitcoin miners into data centers as we can this year.
Yeah, so it's going to be a rapid rollout from the sound of things.
That's the plan.
Yeah,
we've ordered our first 100. We're now negotiating for our next 100 Bitcoin miners and where they sit within the diversified network.
Yeah. And the other thing that really struck me is quite interesting. Going back to energy and your decision to locate these machines in Labrador is this is green energy that's powering them, and that's obviously been
this
massive.
one's green energy. Yeah, I mean they buy power at a much lesser price than what we get it. I mean, Quebec Hydro is probably the lowest cost energy on planet Earth from a utility perspective. Which is why we'll probably swing to the next set of units going into Canada, but it'll be somewhere else. But as the grid prices change, we may well find that certain parts of America that get hydro are very competitive.
Yeah. I mean, and it does make a difference. I think people really want to see, the green label attached to Bitcoin. As I say, it's been one of the major criticisms of.
Well, right now with the price of hydrocarbons, oil and gas, being quite elevated, then your cheapest long-term power supply is typically renewable sources.
Yeah.
So, for our perspective, I would suggest that most of our Bitcoin rollouts clusters will be into areas that are predominantly green fed.
Yeah.
If the price of oil drops and gas drops significantly, but with the Russian crisis going on, I can't see that happening too quickly. Then obviously you'll end up with some clusters that are purely gas and coal fired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oil fired.
And presumably, one of the first things you did on listing was acquiring the mining operations of Valereum, which was 20 machines. Presumably, there are a lot more deals like that out there to be had.
No. The reason we bought the Valereum machines is Valereum is in the closing stages of buying the Gibraltar Stock Exchange, and that's their prime objective. And owning Bitcoin miners really sort of muddies the regulatory waters if you're going to own an exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And by buying existing miners with the wallet that came with it, allows us to list as an operating company on Aquis, not as an investment company. So we can grow very quickly as an operating company versus an investment company. And once you sort of list as an investment company, it's a fair process to go through and new prospectuses to ultimately become an operating company. So it suited us, very nicely to do that.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, you mentioned obviously you're going to be rolling out the machines very quickly over the next year. What else can we expect on the news flow front? Why should investors be following Vinanz this year?
Well, we've got a market cap of about £4 million. We've got money in the bank. With the next 100 units we put in, Jeremy Edelman, my co-director, and myself, we're fairly comfortable that should put us into a cash flow positive position as a PLC or as a listed company, even though we're a limited. We're also looking at actively dual listing on the OTC markets. Historically in London, crypto type companies, and we saw it with Argo, we saw it Kryptonite One. The moment you get exposure into a much bigger market, OTC QB is really our target, and we're talking to a number of lawyers and advisors to do that. Our liquidity should pick up quite significantly. So, that corporately, that's what we're looking at doing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
We've had discussions with OTC QB people. Typically, it's a 6 to 8 week process.
Yeah, and there's huge interest in all things crypto in North America. You mentioned as well that in time.
I was reading something today that 1 in 5 Americans now has crypto assets.
It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
And growing.
Yeah, and you mentioned in when you came to market that you'll also be looking potentially at other types of crypto and DeFi as you move forward. What's the sort of schedule for that?
Not on the immediate horizon. I think we want to keep the model, keep it simple, stupid. People understand Bitcoin. We understand Bitcoin. Our mathematicians that work with us are Bitcoin experts, and really Bitcoin is the principal cryptocurrency. Everything else is a derivative of it, even Ethereum.
Yeah. So
the only true cryptocurrency right now is Bitcoin, and that's where we want to keep it.
Yeah.
And with a symbol like BTC, if people want to invest in Bitcoin but not buy a miner, which is a complicated process, we're setting Binance up as a company that gives you exposure to Bitcoin because we're highly leveraged to the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah. It's a great story, and Bitcoin, as you say, it is the standout asset in the crypto space, and presumably the Bitcoins are already rolling in thick and fast.
Yeah, no, that's good. And the nice thing about Bitcoin is you make money while you're awake and while you're asleep.
That's the kind of investment we like.
It just keeps dropping in the wallet.
Exactly the kind of investment we like. David, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And if you're interested in keeping up with Vinanz, follow it on Vox Markets, ticker BTC. Thanks, David.
Great. Thanks, John.